The Black Cat. My folks shipped me off to a boarding school when I was 14. Our local high school had a milquetoast principal and a shoddy reputation, and my mother had high hopes of prepifying me, turning me into a plaid-loving, tennis-playing, well-rounded catch for a New England doctor or lawyer. Perhaps I'm a changeling, switched at birth for the child she really wanted to mold. The education was exceptional, I will say that, but socially, it was like living in a pressure cooker. Anyone who was ever shipped off to summer camp and didn't have a ripping good time of it can imagine how boarding school has all the potentials of the worst day in high school without the respite of going home. I attended for 3 years, only leaving campus for 1 weekend besides the allotted holidays. At least my parents conceded this point. I got to attend a coeducational school. My mother had fixated on an all-girls school, but I balked, hugely relieved when I was accepted at K. The only centipede in the bubble bath was that the girls' campus was 5 miles up a mountain from the boys', and while buses ran up and down all day, classes were hardly 50-50. I had 3 boys in my English class on the mountain, and I was one of 2 girls in my Latin class in the valley. The big social occasion was the Saturday night movie. After dinner, girls were dutifully bussed, like cattle, to the movie option at the campus theater down the mountain. We disembarked in a wide parking lot corralled by stone walls and the river. To get to the theater, we walked through a gauntlet of boys and male teachers, following a path that narrowed and wound in front of the dorms and the classroom buildings to the far side of the quad. This gave ample opportunity for jeering, catcalling, and other mob behaviors, with the ambiance of being herded to an auction block. And to get through all of that to see Apocalypse Now, well, I can just say, was hardly a treat. But the other option was to stay in a gray cinder block dormitory and watch television. This was way before cable or satellite. I think the television got 5 channels. If a girl was lucky enough to have a boyfriend, there wasn't much chance to spend time with him. We had classes 6 days a week, required chapel 4 times a week, and even if you met up, there was nowhere to go to have a private moment. Common rooms on the opposite campuses were verboten, and winter in Connecticut is long. You can get frostbite walking around looking for a private spot behind a building. Necking in the chapel seemed just wrong, although I'm sure lots took place there after hours. The chapel, made of slate and stone, maintains a lovely morgue-like temperature on the warmest of days. Still, it was shelter from wind, rain, and snow, and did have shadowy corners. I'm sure it's all different now, but at the time, any infraction of the rules incurred a small work project for 1 to 3 hours in duration. Shoveling snow, scraping gum from under dining hall chairs, extra dish crew, washing blackboards, raking leaves. If you didn't report 2 hours, you got more hours. My slate was clean. I'm dim to the full array of tasks readily dispensed. For the most part, this system made sense and was pretty successful at keeping students in line. There were a few rebellious ones who racked up ridiculous numbers of hours with no intention of completing them. Expulsion was an option, infrequently forced into action. But here was the cruel part. Seniors were allowed to bestow hours on underlings. This meant that a senior with a grudge could assign you a work project just for seeing you, happily inventing your trespass, walking on the grass, not wearing proper uniform, or the all-purpose insubordination. Smart and power-hungry seniors abused this privilege mightily. I learned early on to avoid seniors when in town, often ducking into the graveyard, even hiding behind tall grave markers. I wondered about a woman named Lovesey, who was buried next to 3 husbands. Peachy keen for her if she loved them, but kind of weird for them, no? Buried with strangers who had loved the same woman? Aside from heaps of homework, French papers, Latin translations, and, I'm not kidding, Dickens's Our Mutual Friend in English class, In paperback, it's at least 1.5 inches thick and has 72 characters. Yeah, fun keeping track of that without a chart. And let's not forget the mandatory meals. If you skipped lunch, that's a 3-hour work project, just in case you needed the exercise. Daily routine. Wake up before dawn, select one of the 3 uniform options you have, sign in at breakfast. Class all morning, sign in at lunch, class until 4. Change clothes, go to your required sport. Change back into uni for dinner. Homework all night. Bed check at 10:30. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Wednesday and Saturdays, half days, woohoo. But at the same point, you had laundry to address. 2 campuses of students swarming to the laundromat at the end of town. Feeding quarters to that dryer once you landed a free one sucked up all that free time. You had to be on the bus at 5 p.m. too, or of course there'd be hours for missing the bus and being off campus. And there was always more homework than time. I knew 2 girls who had fathers with terminal illnesses. Each hoped but did not expect their father to live long enough to see them graduate. Some evenings we could hear them crying down the hall or sobbing in the payphone at the bottom of the stairwell. One particularly bitchy senior decided to assign hours to a girl for being on the phone after curfew, a senior's only privilege. This sparked a screaming match and near brawl. Fortunately, the dean wisely made an allowance for the distressed caller. This was our world. Structured, repressed, and isolated on top of a mountain that had its own weather. Weather that was just wild in the early winter, wind sweeping angry clouds across the moon at night, sudden violent storms with strobe light-style lightning, and leaves blowing all the time. On nights when the wind howled and waves flitted across the little pond out front, my roommate Jean and I would sneak off to feel the power of it. We'd run up to the empty field by the road and watch the clouds and stand against the intensity of the gusts. There's something primal and invigorating about stomping out into the storm, the wind, the wild night. I always felt there was something in the woods, something watching us. It was not surprising to me when I struck up a conversation about ghosts with a girl in the riding program who told me that odd things were sometimes found on the horse trails. She said on one riding path that went down the mountain, there was a small clearing with tree stumps arranged in a circle. Each stump had a candle nub on it, burned down to its base. She'd heard they found a severed goat head on the path once, another time a dead cat, and once dead crows hung upside down like freakish wind chimes suspended from the trees over the stump circle. Wiccans might practice in the woods, but they don't use animal sacrifices. This was dark magic, confirming for me that there was a weird energy in the woods. My mother, a bird lover, hated cats. My first experience with a cat was all purring until it hissed and raked its claws down my arm, leaving red streamers of blood. So I'll confess at the time I was not a cat fan. I noticed the black cat on the rock wall one day as we were walking to breakfast. A sleek onyx black cat I'd never seen before. It put the hair up on my neck all at once. It looked very intelligent. It looked like it was watching us, studying us, taking notes. Not a casual observation, a careful study. I watched its eyes pan the group in front of us. The eyes reached us. Gold eyes. We locked eyes. It jumped down and ran away. My friends reluctantly agreed that it was eerie and by no means my imagination. You'll think I'm hopelessly egocentric and exaggerating, but I think not, you'll see. Something about this cat gave me the heebie-jeebies right from the start, and it wasn't the only cat. There were plenty of odd cats, cats that had wandered from the stable and made a breakaway group. No doubt they found their way to the trash behind the dining hall, and bread. But this black cat was something else, something not normal. About the 5th time we played this spy game, I felt it was looking for me. Possibly others too, but I was a target. So the next morning, walking with 2 other girls towards the dining hall, I said, "I want you to watch something." As we approach the dining hall, you'll likely see a black cat. He will appear to be looking for someone. I will bet that when he spots me, he will run away. Sure enough. My friends confirmed that it was eerie and by no means my imagination. They agreed. This became a pattern. Pan, 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 see me, break and run, morning, afternoon, evening. Things escalated. At night, walking to the library, I got the skin-crawling feeling that I was being watched. There were few streetlights back then, so a large circle of light would almost blind one, who was then plunged back into darkness for a lengthy stretch before the next circle of light ahead. As I got closer to, but not in the circle of light, I looked back to see movement, and there it was. A black shadow creeping along the wall behind me, coming to a stop just after I did. I walked, it walked. I stopped, it stopped. I trotted to the schoolhouse, eager to find other students. One windy night, Jean and I were walking to the schoolhouse to cram for a math exam, wanting to use the whiteboard in an empty classroom and spread our notes out on the teacher's desk. Halfway there, we got the creepies. The tree limbs around us bent and swayed, throwing crazy patterns of shadows on the road. I recall trudging, a dragging feeling of textbooks weighing me down. Glancing back, I caught a glimpse of the silent black shadow loping along behind us. I whispered to Jean. Did she see it too? Yes. We crossed the circle of light. I saw motion in the darkness behind us, black hole dark in the night dark. I'd had a bad day, and I felt fed up with it all. The homework, the stress, the bitchy taunting girls, the damn blue polyester skirt, and now this sneaking, skulking cat. I worked up my mojo to a place so angry that I had no fear. I let the book bag drop to the ground with a thunk. I turned fully and faced the cat. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness just outside the circle of light, waiting. Jean started to speak. What are you doing? We should just keep moving. I'd had enough, and I was ready to scream, so I did. If you are anything other than a cat, reveal yourself for what you truly are. Show yourself right now. Note: if you are ever confronted with something supernatural, I don't recommend this tactic unless you know what you're doing and you have a contingency plan. I was utterly unprepared for what happened next. The black cat trotted out of the shadow straight to me, cutting a black radius into the circle of light. It hunched at my feet, looked up at me, and hissed. That full-on kind of angry, spitting, all-teeth exposed hiss. What do you think I am? It seemed to ask. We ran like hell. It ran along right behind us. If anyone had seen us that night from a distance, I'm sure we looked like lunatics. Two girls running and screaming like hell was behind them. I think it was. We got to the glass door of the schoolhouse and pulled it shut behind us. The cat, close on our heels, stopped short of slamming into the pane. It looked up and hissed, staring straight at us. It began pacing back and forth against the door, yowling that piercing and tortured cat and heat sound that puts ice crystals in your spine. We ran to the farthest classroom we could find and stayed there for a long time. We'd have to be back for the room check. We tiptoed to the outer door and peered out. Nothing. I stepped outside a few feet, scanning the bushes and grass for movement. Jean was ready at the door if I spotted it and needed to run back. Nothing. I signaled to Jean and we speed-walked back to our dorm. A good 3 weeks passed and no black cat. The tension of looking out for it eased. I began to relax. Maybe it was gone. Not quite. I saw it one last time. For a change, some entertainment was planned for the girls' campus. A live band was going to perform for a dance at the gym, and the boys were to be bussed up the mountain. This must have been in the spring because it was after dinner and yet still light outside as the buses arrived. Jean and I walked over from the dorm to meet our boyfriends. Quite a crowd of students milled about in the entryway, but I spotted Peter from a distance. He was supporting something in his arms. At first, I thought it might be a gift for me. From about 10 feet away, I recognized the furry black bundle. It was cradled with its face away from me, looking over Peter's shoulder. I stopped short, frozen. Put the cat down. No, it's a sweet kitty. I wanted to show it to you. Put the cat down. But I love cats. Cats are great. This one really likes me. I saw it when I got off the bus. It came to me and let me pick it up like it was waiting for me. He's just purring up a storm. How in the world had that cat found him? I fought to stay calm and not cause a scene. Jean was frozen next to me, her voice jittery. Oh, no, really, she's right. Look, it's a sweet kitty. Here, hold it, Peter insisted. At this point, he turned the cat around to face us, and the cat and I locked eyes. This knowing feeling swept over me that it had picked Peter on purpose. I don't know how or why, but I knew it somehow. Of all the people, 5 busloads of boys, and most of the girls' campus standing around, what were the chances? For the microsecond before it hissed, spazzed, and ran away behind the gym, it stared at me, smug, gloating. I never saw it after that. Perhaps it was just a cranky cat, and the rest was all projection and imagination, a product of stress and the repressive atmosphere. Or it was a familiar that got called home by its owner. Or it became a sacrifice. If by chance you've sent your child off to K, not to worry. As you know, the girls' campus was sold off decades ago. The campuses merged. My teachers are basking in retirement. There are co-ed common rooms and lounges aplenty, and I'd guess they've even dropped the dress code by now. However, if your child is in the riding program, which may still be on the mountain, you might want to warn him or her to be wary of the woods. And don't pick up any black cats. Thank you for listening. If you're interested, the black cat is featured in the collection of ghost stories called Ghost Lite. It's available on Amazon as a paperback or Kindle book. Thank you.